Dr. Alina Voss stood at the edge of a vast chasm, the planet's crimson sun casting a blood-red glow over the jagged landscape. The excavation site was desolate, and yet, beneath the harsh surface of the barren world, something ancient and powerful stirred. Her team, scattered across the site, worked tirelessly, digging through layers of dust and debris. It had taken them months to reach this point, but the discovery was worth it. Buried deep within the heart of a forgotten city, they had found a relic that no one could have predicted. Alina wiped the sweat from her brow, her heart racing with both excitement and fear. She had always been drawn to mysteries of the past, but this was beyond anything she had ever studied. The artifact was unlike anything humanity had encountered. It wasn't just a relic, it was a doorway, one that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, sending shivers down her spine every time she got too close. Doctor called out one of her team members, a young archaeologist named Melia, who was crouched near the artifact. "You need to see this." Alina moved quickly, her boots crunching against the ground as she approached. Melia's face was pale, her eyes wide with both awe and confusion. The artifact before them was a sleek obsidian structure, shaped like a black crystal half buried in the rock. It glowed faintly, the lines etched into its surface shifting as if alive. No visible markings identified its origins. It felt as though it had been waiting for eons to be found. "Is it active?" Alina asked, her voice trembling slightly, betraying her usual composure. Melia nodded, eyes glued to the artifact. "It's not just glowing. It's reacting to us, or maybe to the environment. I've never seen anything like it." Alina crouched down beside her, her mind racing. The relic seemed to hum beneath her touch, as though it was responding to the proximity of human presence. Without thinking, Alina reached out and placed her hand on the artifact. The instant her fingers brushed against the smooth surface, a sudden jolt of energy surged through her arm, sending a shockwave of sensation rippling through her entire body. She gasped, her vision momentarily going black as a flood of alien images overwhelmed her mind. Stars, planets, and vast cosmic landscapes spun before her eyes, shifting, twisting. She saw beings, not human, but powerful and ancient, their forms existing in the shadowed realms of space, and then a voice. A whisper that was not spoken, but felt deep inside her. "You are the Heirs. The time is near." Alina recoiled, gasping for breath as the vision faded. The connection broke as suddenly as it had come, leaving her disoriented, her heart pounding. Her hand hovered over the artifact, but she didn't dare touch it again. The voice echoed in her mind, a chilling message that seemed to reverberate through every fiber of her being. She could feel something inside her, something awakening. Melia's voice cut through the confusion. "Doctor, are you all right?" Alina looked up, her face pale, her mind racing to process what had just happened. The visions, the voice, it was as if something deep within her own psyche had been unlocked. The Heirs, what did it mean? The artifact pulsed once more, as if waiting for her to respond. "We need to leave," Alina said, her voice hoarse. "Now." But it was already too late. The tremor that had shaken her body moments before was nothing compared to the violent quake that rattled the entire excavation site. Alina barely had time to register the danger before the ground beneath them began to split open. Rocks and debris rained down from above, and a deep guttural rumble echoed from below. Before she could react, a shadow loomed overhead, a massive shape obscured by the swirling dust. It was as if the planet itself had come alive, responding to the disturbance caused by the artifact. "Everyone, get to the evacuation shuttle," Alina screamed, her voice barely audible over the chaos. As she turned to flee, the artifact seemed to pulse one last time, its energy rippling outward in a shockwave that sent Alina tumbling to the ground. A vision flashed in her mind once more, this time clearer than ever before. The legacy is awakened. The void is near. The ground split open beneath her, and darkness consumed her vision. This opening sets up a mysterious, high-stakes atmosphere with escalating tension. The artifact's power awakens a latent connection within Alina, signaling that humanity's history and future are tied to an ancient force. The unexpected catastrophe that follows heightens the urgency and suspense, ensuring the audience is hooked for what comes next. Alina awoke with a sharp intake of breath, her vision blurry as she struggled to focus on her surroundings. The world around her was still shaking, the ground beneath her cracked and jagged, but there was no sign of the destruction she had just witnessed. She was no longer at the excavation site. Instead, she found herself in the dimly lit cockpit of the evacuation shuttle, her hands gripping the armrests as the shuttle barreled through the atmosphere, a few of her team members unconscious beside her. The noise of the engines drowned out everything else, but her mind was racing, replaying the visions and the voice that had called to her. The shuttle's onboard systems blinked with life as the captain, Commander Vance, a tall, weathered man with gray hair and a deep-set frown, glanced at her from the cockpit. His eyes narrowed with concern. "Dr. Voss, you're awake. How are you holding up?" Alina opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't explain what she had felt, what she had seen. The artifact's connection, the overwhelming visions, her body still trembled at the memory of it. I don't know," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something happened. Something inside me. The artifact, it's more than just a relic." Vance turned his attention back to the controls, his expression hardening. "We felt the tremor all the way from orbit. The whole planet was destabilizing. The artifact caused it, didn't it?" Alina nodded, still in a daze. "Yes, and there's something worse. The message I heard." She paused, swallowing hard as she tried to put the words together. "It said the Heirs. The time is near. I don't know what it means, but it's as if we're meant to awaken something," Vance finished, his voice grim. "I've heard stories, strange accounts of objects like that artifact, objects with powers beyond comprehension. But the Heirs? That's new. I've never heard of them, and I've seen my share of old, dangerous texts." The shuttle's engines roared as they broke through the atmosphere, the scene below growing dim as they ascended. Alina's thoughts were a whirlwind, her mind grappling with the gravity of the situation. The artifact had not only caused the collapse of their excavation site, it had triggered something much larger, something that reached back into the depths of human history and beyond. It wasn't just a relic, it was a signal. "Doctor," a voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Melia had regained consciousness and was sitting up, her face pale, her eyes wide with confusion. "Did you see it too? The shadows, the faces. I saw them, floating in the void, reaching out to us." Alina's eyes widened as Melia's words struck her with a chill. She hadn't told anyone about the vision of the Voidwalkers, the beings who appeared in her mind like a nightmare made real. "You saw them?" Melia nodded, her hands trembling. "It wasn't just a dream. I swear, I felt them watching us. We're connected to it somehow. All of us." She shuddered, then added, "There's something in our blood, something we can't escape." Alina's pulse quickened. "You're right," she said, her mind racing. "The artifact didn't just unlock memories. It's awakening something within us. I felt it too, something dormant, something powerful." A sudden crackle interrupted their conversation, and the ship's comm system flared to life. Vance's voice came through, strained. "Dr. Voss, you need to see this." Alina scrambled toward the cockpit, her heart pounding. When she entered, her eyes were drawn to the holographic display showing a map of their journey back to their station. But it wasn't the map that caught her attention, it was the anomaly. A dark, swirling shape in space, a patch of inky blackness growing larger by the second. It was the void. "We're not just running from the artifact," Alina murmured, her voice filled with dread. "The void is already here, and it's coming for us." Vance's hands gripped the controls as he swerved the shuttle to avoid the gravitational pull of the expanding anomaly. "What the hell is that?" he shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's like something's tearing the fabric of space itself." The shuttle's alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The void was no longer just a legend. It was alive, spreading across the stars, pulling everything into its dark embrace. Elena's mind raced, her pulse pounding in her ears. She remembered the final part of the message, the words that had lingered in her thoughts. "The void is near." And now it was right on their doorstep. This continuation builds suspense and raises the stakes, intensifying the mystery surrounding the artifact and its connection to the void. The growing threat of the void itself, coupled with the team's unease, keeps the audience hooked as the story hurtles toward the larger conflict. Elena's heart hammered in her chest as the shuttle continued its erratic course, darting through the swirling anomaly in the black void. The crew was in full panic mode, scrambling to avoid the expanding rift that seemed to devour everything in its path. The previously stable fabric of space was buckling under its influence, and the very air inside the shuttle felt thick, as though the void itself was pressing in on them. Vance's voice cut through the chaos, grim but controlled. "Hold on. We're not out of this yet. We need to find a way around that thing. It's getting too close." Elena, gripping the sides of her seat, could feel the intensity of the situation weighing on everyone. They had no idea how to combat an anomaly that was warping reality, let alone something that was spreading through the fabric of space itself. The void, once a distant and incomprehensible concept, was now real, and it was coming for them. "We need to warn the rest of the fleet," Elena said, her voice steady despite the rising panic in her gut. "This isn't just happening to us. It's happening across the galaxy." "Warning won't be enough." Kai Takita's voice, calm yet firm, rang out from the back of the shuttle. Elena turned to see him leaning against the doorframe. He had been with the military resistance for years, and his instincts told him more than anyone that the storm was coming. "We need to fight back. That anomaly, it's not just an effect, it's a catalyst. Something is pulling us toward it, and it's using the artifact." Elena's gaze snapped back to the holographic display in front of her. The anomaly was growing larger by the second, as though it was aware of their presence. She thought back to the artifact, the way it had reacted to her touch, how it seemed to call to the very essence of the void. It had triggered something much older than they had ever realized, and now it had awakened something far worse. "What do you mean, it's using the artifact?" Elena asked, her voice tightening. Kai moved to the console, tapping a few keys to bring up ancient data files. His eyes darkened. "The artifact is a key, a beacon. Whoever controls it controls the void itself. And I think that's what the Heirs want." The term Heirs hit Elena like a bolt of lightning. The message that had haunted her from the artifact, the cryptic whisper, "You are the Heirs." It was not a message of hope. It was a warning. "Who are the Heirs?" Elena asked, her mind racing to catch up. Kai exchanged a look with Vance, who gritted his teeth. "They're a faction scattered across the galaxy. People who've learned to harness the void's power, or rather, they think they can. They believe they're the true descendants of the Voidwalkers, ancient beings who manipulated the fabric of space and time. If they're using this artifact, they're unlocking something catastrophic." Elena's pulse quickened. The Heirs, the Voidwalkers. Could they have been the ones who left this legacy behind? Were they the ones who had abandoned humanity to its own devices, hiding the key to unimaginable power? And now the Heirs had found it. This has to stop," Elena muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Kai nodded gravely. "The void is going to consume everything, planets, stars, entire civilizations. This is no longer just about surviving the anomaly. We need to find the Heirs, stop them from unlocking the void, and destroy that artifact before it's too late." Alina stared out the window, where the swirling darkness of the anomaly loomed, too close for comfort. She knew what was at stake now. This wasn't just some ancient relic that could be left to rust in a museum. It was a harbinger of doom, and the Heirs were its heralds. "We're too far from the fleet," Vance said, snapping Alina out of her thoughts. "We need to land somewhere, get our bearings, and make a plan. The longer we stay in this rift, the harder it'll be to escape." "We're not just going to escape," Alina said, determination rising in her chest. "We're going to fight. We're going to stop this before it spreads any further." As the shuttle streaked through the rift, heading for a nearby uncharted moon that could serve as their base of operations, Alina's mind was a storm of thoughts. The Heirs were not just searching for power, they were the heirs to a devastating legacy, and they would stop at nothing to see their vision of the void fulfilled. And as the shuttle descended through the rift's edge, Alina knew that they were about to step into the eye of a galactic storm, a storm that could either make them the saviors of the galaxy or the final witnesses to its collapse. This part builds on the growing danger of the void, while introducing the Heirs as a significant threat, positioning Alina and her team against an enemy that is not only powerful, but also tied to humanity's origins. The pacing is tense, and the stakes continue to rise as the team prepares for what's next. The air inside the structure was thick with an oppressive energy, its low hum reverberating through Alina's chest as though the very walls were alive. The moment they crossed the threshold, the sensation of being watched grew overwhelming. It was as if something ancient and malevolent had been waiting for them, and now it was aware of their presence. Vance motioned for the team to spread out, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay alert, we don't know what's in here." Alina's steps echoed in the darkness as she followed the others into the cavernous entryway. The walls were jagged, formed from a material that shimmered faintly in the dim light from their flashlights. It was almost organic, pulsing with an energy that seemed to respond to their movements. The deeper they ventured into the structure, the stronger the hum became, vibrating through their bones. "Whatever this place is," Kai muttered, his voice low, "it's not just a building. It's a conduit, a link to something far beyond us." Alina nodded, her eyes scanning the alien architecture. It was like nothing she had ever seen. The walls were lined with symbols that twisted and writhed, almost as though they were alive, shifting in ways that defied logic. The air was thick with a strange, metallic scent, and the temperature seemed to drop with every step they took deeper into the heart of the structure. They reached a large chamber, its center dominated by a massive circular platform, surrounded by rows of intricate alien machinery. The platform pulsed with a deep, rhythmic glow, and a swirling dark energy seemed to spiral above it, like a storm waiting to break. Alina could feel the pull of the energy, a magnetic force that tugged at her very being. "That's it," Alina whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. "That's what the artifact is tied to." Kai stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the platform. "This isn't just a gateway. It's a ritual. The Heirs are trying to open a portal, one that connects to the void itself. This structure, it's the key." "How do you know all this?" Milia asked, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What makes you so sure?" Kay didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the symbols etched into the walls, his brow furrowed in concentration. After a long pause, he spoke again, quieter this time. "I've seen this before, not in my time, but in ancient records. The Voidwalkers used devices like this to bridge the gap between their realm and the physical world. This place is a remnant of their power, only it's been abandoned for millennia." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. The Heirs were not just after power, they were tapping into something far more dangerous. The void was not just a force, it was a realm, a place beyond the stars, a place of unimaginable darkness that could consume entire worlds. "We can't let them finish this," Alina said, her voice resolute. "If they succeed in opening the portal, there won't be anything left to save." Vance nodded, drawing his weapon. "We need to find the artifact and destroy it. It's the only way to stop them." The team moved forward cautiously, eyes scanning every corner of the chamber. But as they neared the center of the platform, a loud, shrill noise pierced the air. The wall seemed to tremble as though the structure itself was reacting to their presence. Elena's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively reached for her weapon. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far side of the chamber. It was tall, shrouded in dark robes, and its face was obscured by a hood. The figure's movements were unnervingly smooth, as though it was gliding through the air, not walking. The figure stepped forward, and the hum of the chamber grew louder, more intense. Elena's eyes narrowed as she recognized the insignia on the figure's chest, a symbol she had seen on the artifact. It was unmistakable. "The Heirs?" Elena muttered under her breath. The figure raised its head, and Elena felt a jolt of recognition. There was something familiar about the presence, something almost ancestral. It was as if this figure had existed long before humanity had ever set foot among the stars. "You should not have come here." The figure's voice was low, resonant, and ancient, a voice that seemed to echo through time itself. Elena's stomach clenched as the figure's words rang in her mind. The Heirs were not merely a group of individuals. They were the inheritors of something far darker, a power that transcended time and space. "We're not leaving without stopping you," Elena said, her voice filled with defiance. The figure's hooded face seemed to crack a smile, though there was no warmth in it, only cold, ancient knowledge. "You cannot stop what is inevitable," it said, its voice a whisper that slithered into Elena's mind. "The void will consume all, and you will be its first offering." Before Elena could react, the ground beneath them began to shake violently, and the swirling energy above the platform intensified, flaring up like a storm about to break. The Heir raised its hands, and the dark energy responded, coiling around it like a living thing. The portal was opening. This part heightens the tension as Elena and her team encounter the Heirs, revealing the true scope of their plan. The structure's alien technology and the appearance of the Heir themselves add a new layer of mystery, while the ominous opening of the portal sets the stage for the escalating conflict to come. The air inside the structure was thick with an oppressive energy, its low hum reverberating through Elena's chest as though the very walls were alive. The moment they crossed the threshold, the sensation of being watched grew overwhelming. It was as if something ancient and malevolent had been waiting for them, and now it was aware of their presence. Vance motioned for the team to spread out, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay alert. We don't know what's in here." Elena's steps echoed in the darkness as she followed the others into the cavernous entryway. The walls were jagged, formed from a material that shimmered faintly in the dim light from their flashlights. It was almost organic, pulsing with an energy that seemed to respond to their movements. The deeper they ventured into the structure, the stronger the hum became, vibrating through their bones. "Whatever this place is," Kai muttered, his voice low, "it's not just a building. It's a conduit, a link to something far beyond us." Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the alien architecture. It was like nothing she had ever seen. The walls were lined with symbols that twisted and writhed, almost as though they were alive, shifting in ways that defied logic. The air was thick with a strange, metallic scent, and the temperature seemed to drop with every step they took deeper into the heart of the structure. They reached a large chamber, its center dominated by a massive circular platform, surrounded by rows of intricate alien machinery. The platform pulsed with a deep, rhythmic glow, and a swirling dark energy seemed to spiral above it, like a storm waiting to break. Elena could feel the pull of the energy, a magnetic force that tugged at her very being. "That's it," Elena whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. "That's what the artifact is tied to." Kai stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the platform. "This isn't just a gateway, it's a ritual. The Heirs are trying to open a portal, one that connects to the void itself. This structure, it's the key." How do you know all this? Melia asked, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. What makes you so sure? Kay didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the symbols etched into the walls, his brow furrowed in concentration. After a long pause, he spoke again, quieter this time. I've seen this before, not in my time, but in ancient records. The Voidwalkers used devices like this to bridge the gap between their realm and the physical world. This place is a remnant of their power, only it's been abandoned for millennia. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The Heirs were not just after power, they were tapping into something far more dangerous. The void was not just a force, it was a realm, a place beyond the stars, a place of unimaginable darkness that could consume entire worlds. We can't let them finish this, Elena said, her voice resolute. If they succeed in opening the portal, there won't be anything left to save. Vance nodded, drawing his weapon. We need to find the artifact and destroy it. It's the only way to stop them. The team moved forward cautiously, eyes scanning every corner of the chamber. But as they neared the center of the platform, a loud, shrill noise pierced the air. The wall seemed to tremble as though the structure itself was reacting to their presence. Elena's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively reached for her weapon. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far side of the chamber. It was tall, shrouded in dark robes, and its face was obscured by a hood. The figure's movements were unnervingly smooth, as though it was gliding through the air, not walking. The figure stepped forward, and the hum of the chamber grew louder, more intense. Elena's eyes narrowed as she recognized the insignia on the figure's chest, a symbol she had seen on the artifact. It was unmistakable. The Heirs, Elena muttered under her breath. The figure raised its head, and Elena felt a jolt of recognition. There was something familiar about the presence, something almost ancestral. It was as if this figure had existed long before humanity had ever set foot among the stars. You should not have come here. The figure's voice was low, resonant, and ancient, a voice that seemed to echo through time itself. Elena's stomach clenched as the figure's words rang in her mind. The Heirs were not merely a group of individuals. They were the inheritors of something far darker, a power that transcended time and space. We're not leaving without stopping you, Elena said, her voice filled with defiance. The figure's hooded face seemed to crack a smile, though there was no warmth in it, only cold, ancient knowledge. You cannot stop what is inevitable, it said, its voice a whisper that slithered into Elena's mind. The void will consume all, and you will be its first offering. Before Elena could react, the ground beneath them began to shake violently, and the swirling energy above the platform intensified, flaring up like a storm about to break. The Heir raised its hands, and the dark energy responded, coiling around it like a living thing. The portal was opening. This part heightens the tension as Elena and her team encounter the Heirs, revealing the true scope of their plan. The structure's alien technology and the appearance of the Heir themselves add a new layer of mystery, while the ominous opening of the portal sets the stage for the escalating conflict to come. The air in the chamber crackled with a palpable, unnatural energy, as though the very fabric of reality was warping in response to the figure's movements. Elena's pulse raced, her fingers twitching toward her weapon as the Heir raised its hands, sending a surge of dark energy into the platform beneath them. The hum of the chamber became deafening, vibrating through the floor, walls, and even their bones. The portal above the platform began to widen, its edges bleeding dark tendrils of nothingness into the air. Elena's mind screamed for her to act, to stop whatever ritual was unfolding before her. But the Heir was already in control. The figure's face remained hidden beneath its hood, but Elena could feel its eyes, cold, knowing, and ancient, boring into her, as though it could see through her every thought. You're too late, the Heir's voice echoed, a chilling whisper that filled the chamber and reverberated in Elena's mind. The void is already here, you cannot stop what has already begun. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and Elena's heart thudded in her chest as the swirling energy above the platform reached a crescendo. It was as though the air itself had become thick with the void's presence. She could feel it tugging at her, a cold, relentless pull, like a great chasm opening beneath her. It was the abyss, the thing the Heirs sought to control, and they were opening a direct gateway to it. "We won't let you succeed," Elena snapped, her voice cutting through the thick tension that filled the room. She drew her weapon, her hands steady despite the overwhelming force pressing down on her. The others followed suit, their weapons raised, their eyes locked on the Heir, ready to fight. The Heir did not move. Its presence was unsettlingly calm, its hands still raised as it continued to channel the dark energy. The portal above them grew wider, the black tendrils reaching down, as if seeking to consume everything in sight. "You think you can fight the void? You think you can stop what we have begun?" The Heir's voice grew stronger, as though its very words were feeding the portal. "The Heirs are the true descendants of the Voidwalkers. We are the chosen to usher in the true evolution of existence. This is our birthright." Elena felt a coldness gnaw at her, not just from the portal, but from the figure's words. The Voidwalkers, those who had manipulated the fabric of space and time, were the ancestors of the Heirs. She had heard whispers of them, ancient beings who had once bridged the gap between worlds, existing outside of time and space. But to think that these Heirs believed they were the rightful successors of such power was unfathomable. They were willing to risk everything, entire civilizations, even the universe itself, to bring the void into their world. "We're not letting you destroy everything we fought for," Vance growled, stepping forward, his weapon aimed directly at the Heir. "This ends now." The Heir's lips twitched into a dark smile, its hands lowering slightly as if the threat was meaningless. "You cannot comprehend what you are facing. The void is not something to be stopped. It is something to be embraced. The universe is dying, and the void is the salvation." The air crackled again, a strange and sickening energy pulsing through the chamber as the Heir's power surged. The tendrils from the portal stretched outward, as if hungry to consume all in their path. Elena felt a sudden, overwhelming pressure on her chest, as though the very air was being drawn into the rift, leaving her gasping for breath. "We have to stop it," Elena said through gritted teeth. "Now." But before anyone could move, the Heir's hands snapped forward with impossible speed, sending a shockwave of energy rippling through the chamber. Elena was thrown backward, her body crashing into the jagged wall of the structure. Pain exploded in her chest as the world spun around her. She struggled to regain her breath, but the pressure was suffocating. The Heir's power was too much. She could feel it pushing against her, bending her reality. Kai was the first to recover, his hands gripping his weapon as he raised it toward the Heir. "This isn't over," he shouted. "We'll fight you to the last." But even as he fired, the shot seemed to dissipate into the energy around the Heir, absorbed by the dark force swirling in the air. It was as if the Heir was untouchable, a being of pure power that defied every attempt to stop it. "Your resistance is futile," the Heir said, its voice filled with a cruel sense of finality. "The void does not acknowledge your existence. It only seeks to consume. And when it is finished, nothing will remain." Elena struggled to her feet, her vision blurred and her head swimming from the blast. She gripped her weapon tighter, though her body was weak, her mind clouded by the overwhelming force of the void's presence. But she knew that if they didn't act now, everything, every life, every star, every world would be consumed by this dark force. The portal was widening faster now, and the Heir was preparing to complete the ritual. If they didn't stop it, the void would break through, and the universe would be plunged into an endless abyss. "This isn't over," Elena whispered, her voice hoarse. "We can still stop you." With a surge of determination, she pushed herself forward, ready to face whatever came next. The teen followed, each of them fueled by the desperate need to stop the Heirs before it was too late. This part intensifies the stakes, with Elena and her team directly confronting the Heirs and their dark ritual. The ominous and overpowering presence of the void grows stronger, pushing the characters to their limits. The action escalates as they fight against not just physical threats, but the very fabric of reality itself, setting the stage for a final showdown. The chamber seemed to bend around Elena as she struggled to steady herself, her head swimming from the blast. Every breath was a battle, as the air around her thickened, charged with the energy of the void. She could barely hear anything over the deafening hum of the portal growing ever larger, but she knew they had no time to waste. If they didn't stop the Heir now, they would lose everything. Elena forced herself to her feet, her legs shaking beneath her. Her vision swam with the aftereffects of the shockwave, but the fire in her chest, the drive to stop the void, burned brighter than ever. The Heir stood at the center of the chamber, its hands raised, guiding the energy that swirled around it. The portal was no longer just a rift, it was a gaping maw, opening wider by the second, the darkness from beyond beginning to spill through. Elena could feel it, a tangible pressure like 1,000 weighty hands pulling her toward the center of the storm. "We have to destroy the conduit," Vance said, his voice sharp with urgency. "If we can sever its connection to the void, we can stop the ritual." Elena nodded, her eyes locked on the Heir. "We'll need a direct hit to the core of the platform. I'll cover you." Kai, still recovering from the shockwave, stepped forward, his expression grim but determined. "Let's do this, together." The team moved swiftly, positioning themselves around the chamber, each taking aim at the Heir. The figure seemed almost oblivious to their movements, consumed by the energy flowing through it, its focus entirely on the portal. The air crackled around them as the Heir's dark power pulsed with every breath. "Now," Elena shouted, and the team opened fire. The shots collided with the Heir's form, but they did not penetrate. Instead, they seemed to evaporate into the swirling darkness that surrounded it. The Heir didn't flinch, didn't move. Its grip on the energy only seemed to tighten, amplifying the power of the portal. But Elena wasn't aiming for the Heir. She fired a calculated shot at the base of the platform, where the dark energy was most concentrated. The blast ricocheted off the surface, sending ripples of power through the chamber, but the platform held firm. "This isn't working," Melia shouted, her voice filled with frustration. "We need to disrupt the flow from the inside." Elena's mind raced. The platform was an intricate machine, its design almost organic, as though it had been grown rather than built. It wasn't just an artifact, it was a living connection to the void. To destroy it, they would need to break the connection at its core. "We need to get to the center," Elena said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "If we can sever the energy flow, we might be able to stop it." Kai was already moving, sprinting toward the platform's center, where the energy seemed most intense. Elena followed, Vance and Melia covering them as they pushed through the thickening air. As they neared the platform, the dark energy surged again, a pulse that knocked them off their feet. The chamber shook violently, the walls groaning as though the very structure was being torn apart. Elena struggled to maintain her footing, her eyes locked on the swirling energy at the center. It was a chaotic storm, but there was a pattern to it, a faint flicker at the heart of the chaos. "That's it," Kai shouted. "We can disrupt it." With a single powerful leap, he plunged his blade into the center of the platform, striking at the pulsating heart of the energy. The blade glowed with a strange light as it made contact, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, the entire chamber exploded with energy. The portal shuddered violently, its dark tendrils writhing as if in pain. The ground cracked beneath them as the void's presence pushed harder against the fabric of reality. But with K's strike, the energy was no longer flowing in a single unbroken stream. The connection had been disrupted. Elena felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. The Heir's voice rose above the chaos, a shrill cry that echoed through the chamber. "You fools!" the hare screamed. "You cannot stop what has already begun. The void cannot be halted. It is already here." The hare lifted its arms, its energy flaring outward, an explosion of dark power. The force of it was so great that the chamber itself began to crumble, rocks falling from the ceiling, debris raining down. Elena and her team were thrown back, barely managing to shield themselves from the onslaught of energy. But even as the hare's power surged, Elena saw something that gave her a flicker of hope. The portal was beginning to close. The energy that had once been so powerful was now waning, the tendrils of darkness retracting as the connection to the void was severed. It wasn't over yet. "We're not done," Elena gasped, pulling herself to her feet. The hare was weakening, its focus faltering. "Keep pushing, we can finish this." They surged forward, weapons raised, hearts pounding. The hare turned to face them, its expression filled with hatred and fury. But Elena could see the uncertainty in its movements. The ritual was failing, the power slipping from its grasp. "We're ending this now," Vance shouted. With one final, unified push, they attacked. Elena fired, Kay struck, and Melia launched her own assault. The hare screamed, its voice ragged, as the dark energy it had once controlled was ripped from its grasp. And with that, the void's grip on the universe began to loosen. In this part, the team fights back with all their strength, realizing that the portal can be closed, but only by severing the connection to the void at its core. The stakes are raised as the hare becomes desperate, leading to a final explosive confrontation. The energy is intense and the outcome uncertain, setting the stage for the ultimate conclusion. The hare's form twisted in the air, a dark figure caught between rage and desperation. The portal above them pulsed, its once unstoppable energy now faltering, flickering like a dying star. The air was thick with the smell of burning ozone and the crackle of dark energy. Elena's heart raced, her body still aching from the shockwaves, but her resolve had never been clearer. This was it. This was the final stand. "Finish it," Elena shouted, her voice hoarse but firm. Kai was the first to move, his blade still glowing with a faint energy from when it had pierced the platform's heart. With a grim expression, he leaped forward, striking at the hare. The blade sliced through the air with precision, but before it could make contact, the hare lifted a hand, and the dark energy surged to shield it. The blast of force sent Kai sprawling, his weapon clattering to the floor. "Stay focused," Vance barked, charging forward. "We can't give up now." Melia was already on the move, aiming her rifle at the hare, trying to find an opening. But the dark figure was like a living storm, constantly shifting, its energy deflecting any attack. It was a being that existed outside the rules of their reality, an entity that had tapped into the raw power of the void itself. And yet, even as it struck out with fury, Elena could see it faltering, its energy unstable. The ritual was collapsing. Elena glanced back at the platform, now cracked and shattered. The connection to the void was unraveling, the very fabric of space and time warping and collapsing. The dark tendrils that had once reached out hungrily were retracting, the void itself beginning to lose its grip. But the hare still had power, and with every pulse, it became more dangerous. "We're close," Elena shouted, determination surging through her veins. "We have to push through, now." The hare's eyes flared with dark light, its hands crackling with destructive power. "You think you can stop the inevitable," it snarled. "The void is my birthright. It is not something you can control, it controls you." With a sudden, explosive burst of energy, the hare unleashed a wave of darkness so powerful that the chamber trembled. The walls cracked, and the ground beneath their feet began to fracture. Elena's vision blurred as the energy pushed her back, but she refused to yield. She had seen the destruction the void could bring. She had witnessed its hunger firsthand. If they failed, it would devour everything they had fought for. "Elena, now!" Vance yelled. The moment was perfect. The hare's focus was split, its energy was beginning to backfire. Alina seized the opportunity. She sprinted forward, dodging the erratic bursts of dark energy, her heart pounding in her ears. With a final leap, she dove toward the hare, her hand gripping the last explosive charge they had. She had no time to hesitate. This was the only chance they had. The hare turned in a desperate attempt to stop her, but it was too late. Alina drove the charge into the heart of the hare's chest, where the dark energy surged most fiercely. The blast was immediate, a violent shockwave that tore through the chamber. The hare screamed, its form disintegrating as the explosion ripped through its power, sending the dark energy swirling out of control. The portal above them collapsed inward, and for a moment, the entire chamber was filled with a brilliant, blinding light. Alina was thrown backward, her body slamming into the broken walls of the chamber. Pain exploded in her chest, but she managed to push herself to her knees, gasping for breath. Her vision was a blur, but she could feel the energy dissipating, the pressure in the air lifting. The void was pulling back, retreating from the world it had almost consumed. The ground beneath them continued to shake, the final remnants of the hare's power flickering out. But the portal had sealed, the rift to the void vanishing. The air felt lighter, as if the weight of the darkness had been lifted from their shoulders. Alina looked up to see her team, battered but alive, standing in the remnants of the collapsing chamber. Kai and Vance were pulling themselves to their feet, their faces bruised and bloodied but triumphant. Melia, her rifle smoking, was surveying the chamber, her expression hard but relieved. "We did it," Kai said, his voice a rough whisper, but there was a trace of awe in his words. "It's over." Alina nodded, her heart still racing. "For now, but we've stopped the void from consuming our world." The chamber was crumbling around them, the remnants of the hare's power fading into nothing. The walls collapsed, and the ground cracked open, threatening to swallow them whole. But Alina felt a calmness settle over her. The battle was won, and humanity's future was safe for now. As they made their way toward the exit, Alina cast one last look at the shattered remains of the chamber, the dark energy now gone. The abyssal legacy had been undone, and the hares of the void were no more. But in the back of her mind, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The void had been beaten back, but the hare's ambitions were far-reaching, and there were always others who sought to harness the dark power of the universe. The war for the future was far from over, and she would be ready. In this final part, Alina and her team delivered the decisive blow, using everything they have left to stop the hare and close the portal to the void. The victory is hard-earned, and the collapse of the chamber symbolizes the end of the immediate threat. But the sense of lingering danger suggests that the story is far from finished. The legacy of the void will haunt humanity, and the future remains uncertain, leaving room for new challenges ahead.